Ok, buen día, bienvenidos y bienvenidas al Rincón del Profe Jeff. Here we are today with another episode in our journey through Latin America and Spanish speaking countries. As you can tell, as usual, with our hats, today we are going to visit Guatemala, which is a country in Central America. Now, just a note up front, this is a country that I have not visited personally yet. It's on the bucket list, like many other places, but it's a place that I've always been interested in learning about because of the history and culture and influences that are there. I know many people from Guatemala and others who have lived or passed through there. So one of the reasons that I wanted to touch on Guatemala is because this episode is being recorded on Viernes Santo or Good Friday during La Semana Santa, Holy Week. And as I've learned more about Guatemala, that's one of the things that has intrigued me the most is their celebration of La Semana Santa or Holy Week because it's unique from other places in the world. So we'll do, as usual, we'll do a little bit of a run through on geography, a little bit about the history, though there will always be more information in the video description below. But I'd like to spend most of our time focusing on their celebration of La Semana Santa. We'll talk more about that in a second. Uh, just remember that as these episodes, we're trying to focus on the different P's of culture, products, productos, prácticas, practices, perspectivas, perspectives, and personas and people, and we'll do that with Guatemala as well. So as usual, let's get started by doing our map visit. So as we've done in the past, you can see here Guatemala is front and center in Central America, bordering with Mexico, has a very long border with Mexico on the north and on the west. And on the east, you'll see the border with Belize. Remember that Belize is not considered a Spanish speaking country. It is in Latin America, but uh, a long time ago when I was a kid, it was known as British Honduras because they spoke English there, and Honduras is right here next to it. But that's its name now, Belize. So you'll see that Guatemala has a little bit of a coast in El Caribe down here, and then a coast in on the Pacific. The capital city, of course, is Ciudad de Guatemala or Guatemala City. Some other important places, and we'll get to the pictures of those in a second here. This town over here, a city called Quetzaltenango. Many years ago, when I first came to New Mexico State University, NMSU, we actually had a study abroad opportunity in Quetzaltenango with a language school, and many students that I know went there to study. Uh, but due to different administrative and political reasons, that was something that kind of went away. Right. One of the places that we'll spend a lot of time with near the end is Antigua, Guatemala, down here. It's not too far from Guatemala, Ciudad de Guatemala. And of course, everybody talks about the Lago Atitlan, which is right here, very spiritual center. It's almost in the center of the country when you kind of look, well, maybe not, but in between the two big cities. And it's a place of kind of descanso, of rest and relaxation, and kind of to get away from it all, connect with yourself spiritually if you're into that kind of thing. One of the interesting parts of Guatemala, I was up here in the north. Remember that in this region, especially of Mexico and Guatemala, is hugely influenced by the Mayan culture. And there's a huge ruin complex or archaeological complex called Tikal. And we'll show you a picture that here in a second. So, a very diverse country. It, they have more than 24 different languages, indigenous languages, and about 40% of the population is indigenous, and so that's a huge influence. So on the culture, the people, you need to understand that in Guatemala, while Spanish is a language spoken by many, it is a second language for most people because their first language would be the indigenous dialect, which they grew up learning in their homes and in their communities. So that's a super interesting fact. All right, well, let's check out some of the cities. This would be the capital city of Guatemala. You'll see, and you'll notice in a lot of these pictures that in the background, just like this, where the sun's coming up, you'll see lots of volcanoes, volcanes. Guatemala's got them all over the place. It's part of their legends and history. So if you ever have the chance to go there, just like we mentioned in like Costa Rica and other places, you might see some humo, some steam coming off the top, or feel some temblores, some earthquakes because of the activity there. So, okay, the second city that I talked about was Quetzaltenango. Very beautiful colonial architecture, again surrounded by mountains. A lot of people have the misconception that it's super hot and humid. While it is in parts in Guatemala, they call it the land of the eternal spring because the temperatures kind of stay the same in all these places. And I mean, you look at pictures like this, it's green, you see the clouds down there. So, yeah, this would be one place that I'd love to go see. Many of you might know we've mentioned Tikal. If you're a Star Wars fan, this may look familiar to you because, I mean, there's actually, if you want to check it out, there are websites and things out there that talk about the different places where Star Wars was filmed, and this was one of the earliest ones. Obviously, for copyright reasons, I can't show the pictures of Star Wars, but you might recognize this as one of the bases for, I believe it was an Empire Strikes Back. So there you have it, connecting all kinds of different things with the culture and cinema. Here's a picture of Lago Atitlan. You can see it's surrounded by volcanoes. Here, a deep lake. There are purportedly ruins, unsubmerged ruins in Atitlan, and lots of people go there obviously to relax. I've known many Central American friends of mine who go here for vacation because it's such a peaceful place. One of the places we didn't mention I mean, I think I mentioned it, but I want to show it to you. So when everybody, well, I say that in a general sense, but when people talk about Guatemala, they always say, well, you have to, besides Ciudad de Guatemala, which is where you come in and go out of, and Quetzaltenango, you have to visit Atitlan. But the main place that people talk about is Antigua, Guatemala, which is right here just on the outskirts of Ciudad de Guatemala. It's considered by many the cultural center, like the heart of the country, and that's what we're going to spend most of our time talking about with the celebration of Semana Santa. Here's a picture of it again. Like I said, in all the other pictures, you can see a volcano in the background, probably another one over here, but you can see the very colonial, traditional type of architecture. And what happens during Holy Week is that these streets become decorated, and then on different days at different times on different streets, you'll have processions that take place. Now, as we get into this, we want to remember that perspectives is a huge part of culture as we're learning about culture. And because of, as we've talked many times, Latin American countries have a huge influence from the Catholic religion. And so the practices that we're going to be talking about and the perspectives that we'll be talking about here for the next few minutes are going to be focused on what took place in their tradition during the Semana Santa. Okay, and what's really interesting, as we mentioned earlier, that because of the indigenous influence, like remember we said at least 40% of Guatemalans are of indigenous ancestry. So there's a combination of the religious beliefs from the colonial religion that was brought in, combined with the beliefs from the indigenous groups. And in this case, since the biggest majority is of the Mayan background, and so we'll see how that influences the Semana Santa. So one of the things that Semana they're known for the most in Antigua during the Semana Santa are these things that are called alfombras. Now the word alfombra in Spanish is a carpet or rug, but these aren't made out of woven things, wool or other textiles. These are things that are made out of natural things. So this is a combination of the two beliefs. Remember, the word in Spanish is syncretism, when we combine indigenous beliefs with Western religious practices. And so what this practice is that during Semana Santa, it celebrates in the beginning of the week the entry of when Jesus entered into Jerusalem for the final time in his last week, and people laid down palm leaves or their clothing or cloaks or rugs in front of him as he walked in, kind of a symbol of a recognition of royalty. And so that was a practice that the Spaniards had when they came, but it was also a practice that the Mayan and other indigenous groups had. They, whereas the Europeans laid down their robes and clothes and and things like that, the tradition amongst the Maya group was that they would use natural things like flower petals and branches and things like that to lay down on the ground as the form of respect. And so during the week of Holy Week, and we're going to see a couple of videos here on it, they spend time constructing these elaborate alfombras, intricate designs, all kinds of colors made out of natural things. The principal, besides flower petals and pine needles and sticks and things like that, the main material that they use is called acerrín in Spanish, and that's sawdust. So they take sawdust and dye it different colors and then put it together in these alfombras. And so they're spending these multiple days building this, and then it comes time for processions, and the processions obviously are when they carry the religious relics on their shoulders on these big platforms. And in the videos in the description, you can check out some. We'll see how many we can get to as part of the podcast. But you'll see that then these processions, the people that carrying these religious symbols, walk over these alfombras, and you think, well, why would they go through all this work and then to only be destroyed? Well, that's their offer of sacrifice and devotion to the figures that are passing in the whole idea, the practice and perspective of what Semana Santa means. So the Antigua and the Semana Santa have actually been recognized as a heritage, an official World Heritage Site and an event, and so it's the culture is that impactful, not just for them locally, but for the entire world. Okay. So I found a couple of videos. We'll watch segments of them. This is this gentleman's speaking in Spanish, so we'll just watch a little bit and talk about it. But what he's doing is discovering. This was done a couple of years ago, actually last year. You can always look up online in YouTube and other places to find out and see recordings of the most recent ones. I'll put the ones from 2025, since this is being recorded in 2025, in the link in the video description. But I liked this one because he goes down where they're actually building one of the alfombras, and they're not small. You can see in the background here that they're pretty big, and he actually takes us through the whole process. So we'll skip through. We're not going to watch the whole video here, but you can do that on your own.
Alfombras durante la Semana Santa aquí en Guatemala. Estas alfombras se hacen de...
Remind you that if you want to when you watch this video in Spanish, you can use the closed captioning and turn on the automatic translation, so you can get that if you're not able to, if you don't understand the Spanish. So.
de diferentes materiales y sirven para recibir el paso de la procesión. Es una manera de dar un homenaje y rendir respeto a las imágenes que salen a recorrer las calles de Guatemala estos días. Y en este momento me encuentro con la licenciada Fulvia, que es la que organizó esta alfombra de aquí. Estamos en la zona 1 de la ciudad de Guatemala y en unas horas va a pasar la procesión aquí. Y en primer lugar, aparte de darle la bienvenida, nos preguntamos, para la gente que no lo sabe, ¿para qué sirven estas alfombras?
Bueno, es una tradición que tenemos los guatemaltecos y es para agasajar a Jesús. Viene de la tradición también de la entrada triunfal de Jesús, donde le tiraban palmas, le tiraban los mantos para que pasara. De ahí comienza, ¿verdad? Una ofrenda para el Señor, ¿verdad? Que le damos una vez al año para nosotros, ¿verdad?
¿Y cómo se prepara eso? ¿Se tiene que diseñar previamente? ¿Cómo hacen estas alfombras?
Primero,
So you probably heard her there. She was just talking. He asked her about why they were meaningful, what significance they had, and she reviewed what we talked about with them representing as again, if you're not religious, that's fine. I'm just explaining what the background is here and why it's such an important part. So it's reenacting the entry of Jesus Christ when he came into Jerusalem for his last week. Now she's telling them about how they build them here, and you'll see that they make intricate plans and stencils and things like that, and then they use the sawdust to build the different parts. Let me jump through here. Yeah, you can see some of the there you can see some of the stencils that they do. And one of the things that she mentions as part of that conversation was that it's nobody's paid to do this. This is all volunteer, and lots of families come down together and spend hours and hours doing this as part of their display of devotion and faith. So let's see. Yeah, let's jump up here. Here they're going to talk about using the acerrín, which is the sawdust, to help put together these elaborate designs.
Estoy grabando. En este momento me han dado permiso para echarle un poco de acerrín en esta alfombra que está haciendo también el MP. Vamos a echarle... Es más complicado de lo que parece esto, ¿eh? ¿Cómo lo ves?
Hay que hacerlo así, mira.
Apacharlo. Eso es madera, digamos, de acerrín, ¿eh?
Este es viruta de madera.
Viruta de madera, pintada. Ya la compran pintada.
Venden y se puede hacer.
Ah, ya. Bueno, ahí lo repasan, ¿eh? Cualquier cosa, no hay pena. Gracias.
Super interesting to see how they do that. And I've seen pictures in other places where they've done intricate designs with peacocks and other birds. One of the ones we didn't talk about that we should mention, especially for Guatemala, is the quetzal bird. I've seen designs of the quetzal bird. That's actually part of the name of that town, Quetzaltenango. It's the national bird of Guatemala and a huge influence from the Maya. That's one thing that I didn't mention when part of this, when the tradition originally started, they would also use feathers from birds as part of the decorations. I'm kind of glad they've moved to the aserrín, so they're kind of protecting those kind of things. But as we saw there, they dye the aserrín, the sawdust, into different colors and use that in their designs. Okay, we're gonna jump through a little bit more in the video. Bear with me while I get to a different part. One of the things, and this is what we'll watch in this next segment, how they get the design on the ground. You saw there they had different templates. This last one we're going to see was actually a figure that was done not necessarily with a stencil, but they took a huge plan, like a blueprint, and rolled it out on the ground and then traced the design. So let's get there. Here we go.
100-120 metros.
Es bastante, bueno. Y este dicen que es el secreto de la alfombra, no sé qué significa. Parece como una plantilla, es una...
This one they're going to build is going to be about 100 to 120 meters long. So you'll see how, and I've seen pictures of them that are short, just right in front of somebody's house, or that take up the entire block or even longer.
plantilla esto.
Bueno, esta es el molde o la plantilla con la que realizamos el diseño. Con esto nos es más fácil realizarlo. Ya viene cortadito para hacer las marcas. Y ahí pues tenemos que volver a la primaria a unir puntos. Y ya tenemos el diseño listo. Ahorita.
So he's talking about how they're going back to elementary school and doing connect the dots. Remember those drawings that we used to do? So that's what they do here, and then you can see there in the background that they're tracing it on the ground.
Como puedes ver, ahí todavía están los restos de la alfombra del sábado. Ahora vamos a ver cómo nos queda la del día martes.
Para pasar con yeso, después solo unimos puntos y ya queda todo el molde hecho, únicamente para rellenar con la viruta.
¿Y dónde la hicieron? Porque esto se necesita un buen espacio, ¿no?
En la casa de un amigo, nos juntamos todos a hacer los moldes.
¿Y vosotros sois voluntarios?
Sí, esto es totalmente voluntario. Por fe y devoción, un grupo de amigos lo decidimos hacer.
Para la gente que se lo pregunta, ¿cuánto puede costar una alfombra así de material? Evitar que se la lleve el viento.
Ajá, sí, justo.
Hay que mojarla bastante, entonces.
Sí, bastante, y se está regando constantemente por lo mismo.
Por lo mismo.
Sí.
So you'll see there they use water. They spray the ground with water to help the acerrín stick, and then they keep moistening it so that it will stay in place and not blow away. But you'll see here that they're putting this one together. You can imagine, I mean, you can see how the sun angle has changed as we've been watching it. It takes hours to do this kind of a project.
Vale, vale. Entonces, solo este hilo le das un golpecito y ya lo marca.
Ahí ya te tira la línea con el polvito.
Porque tiene polvito dentro de aquí adentro.
Y aquí adentro. Pues aquí tiene el polvito y eso es lo que en el hilo...
Y eso es como material de obra o así.
Sí, cabal.
Ah, vale, vale, vale.
Para hacer obras.
Ah, mira, entonces ya queda toda la línea marcada. Oh, qué guay, qué guay. Y aquí estoy pues colaborando un poco con esta alfombra de correos y la verdad es que podríamos decir que es algo fácil, lo que sí es muy laborioso, eso sí. La técnica aquí está o lo más difícil es no salirse de la línea y sobre todo...
Talking about staying in the lines. back to the coloring techniques that we all grew up doing in our early years. So just jumping through here so we can get a picture of what it looks like near the end.
Casi completada, está increíble y la verdad es que con la iluminación del arco de correos se ve épico. Marlon, ¿cuánto tiempo llevas aquí en el día de hoy?
Vine como a las 4 de la tarde,
Y ahorita son como 3 horas.
como 3 horas más o
Muy
menos.
bien. ¿Estás cansado o no?
Un poquito,
¿Sí?
un poquito, pero me anima. Pues la verdad es un momento bonito para compartir con los demás y pues un poquito de la fe también, ¿verdad?
Claro, yo tengo esa pregunta.
Es bonito.
Y con estas impresionantes imágenes desde el arco, me despido de todos vosotros. Muchísimas gracias por haberte quedado hasta aquí. Dime en los comentarios qué te ha parecido esta experiencia y si tú la has hecho alguna vez o si tú la harías en caso de que no la hayas hecho. Y nada, hasta la próxima. Muchísimas gracias. ¡Chao!
Right, cool. So you switch back out here. So there you see how it, the hours and hours that it takes to build those, again, out of their beliefs, their devotion to the practices and their perspectives of what they're all about there with the Semana Santa. I'm not going to show any of the processions here on the podcast today, but check some of them out. You'll see that, again, this is a day-by-day celebration, as we learned in that video. That in some cases they build one every day in different spots. This one they do on different days, and because there are practically processions every night, every afternoon, evening, for their celebration of La Semana Santa. So yeah, go ahead and check those out so you can get a feel for what it's like. I'd invite you, I'm not going to do it in this podcast, perhaps in some of the future ones. Another big place that Semana Santa is celebrated, of course, all over Latin America, but some of the most well-known celebrations are also in España and Spain, where the tradition obviously originated and then was brought over and then combined with the religious beliefs of the indigenous people here. So we're coming down to the end. We've talked about a couple of the mostly perspectivas and prácticas, perspectives and practices. When I think of Guatemala, there's I want to just bring up one of the people that's been very super influential in the world, and especially for her people in Guatemala, is a lady by the name of Rigoberta Menchu. We'll pull up her picture here. She won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1992, so it's been some time, and that was after a lot of turmoil during the 70s and 80s. Central America, many countries went through upheavals of civil wars and war, of people against their government. And Rigoberta Menchu, if you like to do some research on her, it wouldn't be wasted at all. She was especially active as an activist for indigenous and women's rights, because obviously that's in a macho culture like there is in many places in Latin America. That's two strikes against you. Number one, being indigenous. Number two, being a woman. And so she was very influential in making great strides to have not only the indigenous people recognized, but indigenous women especially. There are some links in the video description below about her. So yeah, please check it out and learn more about her if you can. With her in mind, with coming to the end of our podcast today, with the invitation to always learn more about the country that we just visited a little bit. Again, I look forward to going someday, hopefully. The quote of the day is actually going to be from Rigoberta Menchu, who we just her full name is Rigoberta Menchu Tum, the Tum being her indigenous last name. Well, Menchu is also indigenous as well, but Rigoberta would come from the combination of the two cultures. So, as always, in Spanish first and then in English. So, we'll close by saying, como nos recuerda Rigoberta Menchu Tum, la paz no es solamente la ausencia de conflicto. So, she used to say that peace is not only the absence of conflict or war, es la inclusión de justicia y dignidad. It includes justice and dignity. And so we can kind of combine that with what we were just seeing with La Semana Santa. This is not by her, this is my edition. La Semana Santa no solo es una expresión de fe, sino también de esperanza por una comunidad más unida, justa y humana. So Holy Week in Guatemala is not just an expression of faith, but also the hope for a more united, just, and humane community. So with that, thanks for being with us today. Appreciate you listening to, I hope you learned something about Guatemala, and especially the World Heritage celebration of La Semana Santa in Antigua. So have fun exploring. Hasta la próxima. Adiós.